Ludlam. Oh, God.
Come on, Senator.
And apologies that I missed your opening statement. So I've had a quick skim, but maybe you addressed this, maybe you didn't. During the 2013 election campaign, then Communications Minister Malcolm Turnbull committed under an Abbott government to deliver minimum broadband download speeds of 25 megabits per second by 2016 at a cost of $29.5 billion. How's that going?
I don't know anything about those numbers. What I do know that from the strategic review that was done in 2013 after Malcolm Turnbull became the communications minister, that plan was put in place, and that's going largely quite well.
So you have delivered 25 megs per second to the whole country by last December?
Well, let me speak to that.
Go ahead,
obviously, that's the 2013 election policy, which was
voted on. That was the one that people voted for.
Which was...
Senator Ludlam, if you ask a question, please allow them to
Fair enough.
answer the question.
Yep. Which was based on the information that was available to the then opposition at the time. We came into government. There was a strategic review that found that the NBN was in not good shape, and that there was serious replanning that would need to be done. That has been done, and we're working to a different timetable now, and that timetable is being met.
So what did you miss? And maybe it is more appropriate to put this to you, Senator, rather than Mr Morrow, who wasn't even on the payroll at the time. How did you get it so catastrophically wrong that the commitment you made in 2013 to have completed the NBN 25 meg per second by 2016 and 50 meg to 90% of the country by 2019? What was it that you got wrong?
Well, there was very little that had actually been achieved by the previous government with the NBN. There were only, I think, 51,000 connections.
Senator, you were in the same hearings that I was. We were accessing the same information.
Contractors had down tools in 4 jurisdictions. The then organisation and the then government didn't actually know what the cost per premise was. So
they did.
There are whole.
They were reporting it to select committees.
They might have been reporting cost per premise, but the cost per premise that they were reporting was wrong.
Well, it's not.
No,
I've been asked not to interrupt.
Senator O'Neill.
I mean, we've covered. I think this ground.
Minister, can you just hold on?
Sorry, Chair.
I would ask senators here if they please refrain from interjecting or answering Senator Ludlam's question for him. And Senator Ludlam, if I could remind you, if you've asked a question, if you can let the minister answer, and if you don't like the answer, then of course you can follow up with another question. Continue, please, Minister.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, this is ground that's been traversed, I think, at pretty much every estimate since I've been the minister, and I know prior to my time as minister as well, Senator Conroy would cover this ground before, but it's a matter of record that the NBN was essentially a failed project when this government came into office. And we had to reassess on the basis of the facts on the ground.
This is pure reinvention of history, but let's move on because you're right, it has been traversed a few times. Mr Morrow, late last year, maybe third quarter of last year, there was news that you'd abandoned reconditioning the Optus HFC network. Firstly, what was the cost of acquiring that network, and how much did you spend establishing that you weren't then going to be able to use it?
There was no cost to acquire the network. The previous agreement in 2011 left that network to be abandoned. What we did is renegotiate the right to use it,
right,
but with no cost.
You already had it on your books at the time that you took over.
Correct, but there was never any money paid for the network. The previous agreement in 2011 only paid for the migration of customers to move from Optus over to the NBN, right, similarly with Telstra. The decision that we took to no longer use that was for 2 reasons, Senator. First is our advancements that the team has seen in fibre to the curb, that has progressed well enough to lower the cost and accelerate the time frame. And then when we looked at the amount of money that would have to be spent on the HFC network, with the facts and the data that we were pulling in all the way up to that point of decision, that led us to say, let's go ahead and convert that over to this newer technology.
All right. That seems reasonable, although I would say the government before you came on board was warned that that would be the case. I take it, though, that you've made a distinction between the Optus network and the Telstra one. You're still proposing to put Telstra customers onto an upgraded HFC.
That is correct, Senator.
Well, so what was the difference between the two networks?
The way in which the two networks were designed were fundamentally different, and the Telstra network design was more conducive to the ultimate design that we wanted to offer over HFC. So it basically meant that we would have to invest less in the Telstra-based network than in the Optus network. Now, that is not to say the Optus network was not a good network and served its customers well. It's more our architecture and a closer fit for purpose with the Telstra side.
All right. One last one on HFC before I move on. How much new HFC are you going to have to infill into the Telstra network to sort of...
Very little.
Not zero, but not much? So go ahead, Mr. Ruth.
I was saying it's still being determined, but it's not a big percentage.
But single figures, double figures? You still will be laying new HFC to fill in some gaps or degraded parts of the network.
Small.
Less than 10%?
So, well, can I give you a little bit of an idea to kind of explain a little bit? Because we don't know the percentage. We take it on notice if you'd like.
That'll do. I'll move on. And so that's the Telstra network. Mr. Murray, I want to draw your comments to draw your attention to some comments that you made. You'd probably be surprised if somebody didn't bring this up, and I don't think you addressed it in your opening statement. I think you made these comments a couple of times, that Australians aren't interested in gigabit internet. And you're quoted at an event in which I think you're announcing your half-year results. Even if we offered it for free, we see the evidence around the world that they wouldn't use it anyway. And the metrics that you used are, look, if you've got a household full of people all streaming 4K TV at the same time, you're still only using 10 meg and 90% of your capacity is idle. Before I have some views about that, do you stand by those comments in the light of the
Well, Senator, I did not
critique
say
that it
what the
attracted?
initial article that started much of this conversation stated that I said Australians would not want super fast internet even if it were free. That was not what I said. That was a gross misrepresentation of what I said. We were talking in the context of moving from 100 megabits to a gigabit per second, and why aren't people buying gigabit per second? The first belief was that we didn't offer that product, but we have 1.5 million homes today that we do have a product at a gigabit per second level that our retailers have chosen not, for whatever reasons they have, to offer that to their end users.
Okay, can you hold just there, because this is interesting and important. Are all 1.5 million of those homes on the fibre to the premises architecture that was set up by the previous government?
Yes.
What proportion of the 1.5 million homes are on fibre to the node, fixed wireless, fibre to the curb, or satellite?
So there's about 1.6 million on fibre to the node.
Oh, yes, sorry, go ahead.
1.5 million on fibre to the prem, and we have about 500,000 on fixed wireless, 250,000 on HFC, 411,000 on our satellite SkyMuster.
That's RFS.
Those
So
are
what was
RFS
the last number,
numbers.
the SkyMuster?
411,000.
I want to come to that in just a tick. And apologies, I know I could probably have just looked those things up on your site, but it's useful. But the 1.5 million homes that you would offer a wholesale gigabit service to if people would take it up, they're all on the fibre to the premises architecture.
Correct, today. In the future, it will be offered equally so on HFC. But Senator, if I can continue, if you're ready.
Yeah, sure.
So the point is that it's available today, and any retailer can choose that if they desire. Then I was asked, well, why aren't people taking it? And we have done our research to talk to other companies around the world that actually have sold gigabit per second services into the homes of end users. And I asked the question, or we asked the question, do people actually use that much bandwidth? And the answer was a resounding no.
Right.
And the reason is that today there aren't the applications. I believe in the future they are going to come, and they're going to create the bandwidth, and that's augmented reality and virtual reality and 4K and 8K television, all these wonderful things.
How far into the future, Mr. Murray?
It's hard to predict. Nostradamus would have trouble,
I'm
guessing
going
on
to throw you
this
some
one.
numbers from Cisco right now. We don't need to go to Nostradamus. So there's the stuff that I just looked up while I was sitting here while you were giving evidence earlier. And when I hear, this is no offence to you obviously, because it's a very common thing, people using the how many television screens in the house metric, it makes me want to chew my face off, because that implies that you're building a network for the 20th century when television was the most interesting thing coming into people's homes. And that is, I think, almost by definition, not what the internet is for. So overall IP traffic, this is according to Cisco, I think the end of last year, and I'll provide you with a link if it's useful. So just trust me on the raw numbers for the moment. Overall IP traffic is growing at an annually, compound annual growth rates 22% between 2015 and 2020. Does that sound roughly within the ballpark?
Yep.
Okay, that's a doubling time of 3 years and 2 months. Video IP traffic, which I think is the fastest growing sector, compounding annual growth, 31%, doubling time of 2.2 years. VR IP traffic, interesting that you mentioned that yourself, growing at a compounding rate of 127%, so it doubles every 6 months. Business traffic, 18% every 3.8 months, every 3.8 years. And in Australia, IP traffic growth is 21%. So that is, what's that? Every 3 years and 4 months, it doubles, then it doubles, then it doubles, then it doubles. And so I'm not at all surprised, I was a little bit surprised, but not greatly, that you couldn't find that many households that were buying this service in 2017, but you're building a network for 2030 and 2040.
Well, Senator, I would argue we're building a network for today's needs and tomorrow's, and we can upgrade with whatever the future holds.
By pulling out the HFC and the fibre to the node.
No, you don't need to pull out the HFC. The HFC will keep pace with all of those applications that you're referring to
What
without
about
any
peak hour
problem
when
whatsoever.
everybody's hitting the network at the same time because a new season of Game of Thrones just dropped or something?
No,
You get congested.
overseas, again, we're very well in touch with the overseas carriers, and they're investing heavily in HFC. They're already talking about 10, 20 gigabits per second up and down on HFC. Senator, there's too much investment around the world in HFC of these carriers that are competing head-on with the traditional telephone carriers, and that's a sunk asset. That isn't something you abandon and try to go fiber all over and the replacement.
But you have with the Optus network. You were just telling us how you've abandoned that because it was crap.
And that is a portion of it. That was, again, you look at, I think the volume was close to 150,000 that we were going to do on HFC with Optus, that we aren't. We are going to do the near 3 million with HFC on the Telstra, and that 3 million added to the overall numbers of fiber to the prem that we're going to have are going to give us 40% of the nation that will have gigabit per second capability or better. We'll have FTTC that will be another increment that will take us up closer to 50% with the evolution of what that technology will have. And I can tell you, Senator, of looking at the data, no one else around the world with a country of our size and our scope is going to be at 50% of the nation to have gigabit per second capabilities. We will be in a leadership role. And can I further say, Senator, because I know this is a concern of yours and many, the other portions of the network, when you look at fiber to the node, there is upgrade paths that we will extend fiber further down the street. We can utilize a lot of the same equipment that's there. And as that demand comes in where people are willing to pay for the added value, the added utility of these other services, where maybe they don't need their cable subscription any longer, they can rely on more of these kind of streaming sort of content channels, to where the same amount of money is spent in the same household, but they're going to spend more on their broadband connection. That's when we can actually monetize these higher levels. So that's what I was referring to, that it isn't a function of price as to whether or not people are willing to purchase a gigabit per second capability today, because the applications aren't here yet. Now, I want them to be here, and I believe that they will come. And when they come, we will be ready to make sure that Australians can have the network to serve that. But let's not spend the money now betting it'll come. Let's keep the price low, keep this thing as a profit, not go onto the budget to where taxes go up, or you have to defer your money, and we'll spend it with the profits that we're going to make within this company by doing that approach. No one will be constrained, no one will be restricted, we'll still be a part of the future, and we'll do it with financial prudence.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. That was useful. The Vertigan review, that was quite an important part of changing tack from the all-fibre network, or it wasn't all fibre, mostly fibre to the premise network, to the multi-technology mix that you're building. Vertigan said, as of 2023, medium household will require 15 megabits per second download. Is that number just junked, or are you still working to that? Please tell me that's dead. 15.
I can tell you it's not my household. I need more than that.
Right. I mean, you're probably a fairly heavy internet user, I imagine, running...
Yeah, we've got 4 or 5 people using the internet quite a bit.
So what about everybody else? That was his view. Median household will require that as of 2023, not even now.
Well, I think if you actually look at what John we're selling today, you can describe that a little bit of what we're seeing.
I just want to know whether Vertigan was right or wrong, because time's a little bit short.
At 15 megabits?
In 2023. Let's just get this over with.
Well, the thing is, that, as Mr Morrow outlined, the network will have far greater capability than that.
Okay, so I checked out your site the other day where it says, when is the NBN coming to your town? So I live in North Fremantle, I'm getting fibre to the node. So I'm in the 50% of people who you're going to be hearing a fair bit more from. And the reason that
It's not 50%, Senator, just I don't want to leave the wrong impression. It's going to be less than 40% of the homes will be fibre to the node.
Okay, well, I'm one of them.
Lucky one.
So that's interesting, isn't it? I just had when I was looking to get some rough idea of bandwidth requirements, not in 2017, but in the near term, in the pipeline stuff that's not fairyland, but that we can see coming down the road. I got some figures from Online Reporter, and I'm happy to provide these references to you if you're right to just trust me for the time being. So this is from ARIS. They estimate that a VR game in 720p will require 50 megs per second. That's down. They don't say what it would require up. And a 4K VR game would need 500 megs per second, which is why I'm a little bit frustrated when you're talking about, well, how many people at a time are using 4K TV, because these are not the most interesting applications that are going to be used on this network. You're going to be able to deliver that over a node, or at what point are you going to need to tear that out and just go fibre all the way to the premise?
So there's 2 things to consider
Probably about 5
on this. Well, first of all, I have been around technology my entire career, coming up on 40 years, the bleeding edge of technology, unfortunately. And I can tell you, while today that's the predictions that I've heard from ARIS and many other companies as well, as far as what the VR will require, what that's not taken into account is compression algorithms that will actually scrunch that up to be able to deliver that. So you have to remember that the cost of building networks out is very expensive. So the R&D that'll go into how can I reduce that kind of bandwidth requirement for that sort of application will also be invested in, and we'll see some advancements in that sort of approach as well. But having said that, if that does turn out to be the case, and Senator, if it is mass market where people are saying, I'm willing to pay for having that virtual reality signal coming in, and even if it takes 50 megabits per second, I see the utility and I'm willing to actually up my speeds with my retailer to pay for that. That will support the economics to go through and upgrade that network where we can't get the 50 megabits per second.
By which you mean tear the node out? And
No, that's not required. Can I also remind the Senator that the mandate that we have from the government is 90% of the fixed line area has to be at least 50 megabits per second already. So when you actually kind of average this out, it's about 88% of the nation will be on 50 meg to begin with. So that application we're probably reasonably safe with. Now, if it goes above that, then that's where we're going to have to start investing further into this fiber to the node technologies. The other ones, even the wireless stuff out there, we're doing 50 already. We're seeing these enhanced 4Gs to where that's going to probably go up to 100 pretty soon, maybe even into multiple hundreds. So fixed wireless, HFC, fiber to the prem, no problem. Fiber to the node, again, it does have its limitations, but you're going to get 50. Few people will get a little bit more than that, and we'll continue to push that fiber down. And FTTC is the other one that comes in,
Thank you for that. I'll probably follow up with some of these on notice, but I've got a couple of others that are probably a little bit out of tangent to this line of thought, even though I could go on about this stuff all night. A couple of people have asked, even since we've been sitting here, why NBN's Twitter account is so so readily blocking people who are offering feedback or critical comment? Because that means they can't see your stream or your page.
We have a policy like everybody does that if people are mischievous, if they're insultive, disrespectful, we block them. So that's the policy that we apply, Senator.
For being mischievous?
Yes, definitely.
That seems like a little bit of a low threshold for blocking somebody, because that means they can't see any of the advice
Do you have
Sometimes-
somebody in particular you're referring to?
I would never disclose my sources, but I suspect whoever's operating that account knows exactly who I'm talking
Listen, some of them deserve to be blocked, Senator, I can
Sounds
assure
like
you.
some of them probably don't. Like, I block trolls. I suspect everybody does
Yeah.
in here. But it's just come up a couple of times. It sounds like maybe they're a little oversensitive, but anyway,
No,
I've put
no,
it to you.
again,
so
Senator, as you know, social media brings out, a lot of interesting
The
people.
best and the worst of people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we are going to block all of those people that don't deserve to be on there, that are disrespectful. And we monitor this very closely. It's a policy that it's adhered to by the likes of Facebook and Twitter themselves, lots of other companies that follow this. There's a couple of organizations in particular that are very lobbyist. Internet Australia is one of them. It's run by a couple of people that were failed executives. They are constantly promoting one side of the party's approach on this. They're disrespectful, they're insultive of migrants, so they're blocked, and they'll stay blocked.
You've got half a minute left.
I've got half a minute left. How much greenfield fibre to the node are you putting into the ground?
Do I take that?
Yeah.
I can't tell you the exact number, but our policies on greenfield for Broadacre is still FTTP, but without a doubt where we
It's still
have
what, sorry?
the fibre to the premise.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. However, when we're in an FTTN area, if there is a classic small house redevelopment that turns into a duplex or 4 apartments, then
Doesn't make sense to run a fibre.
if the node's there, we would be connecting to the fibre.
Could you throw some
using the
metrics
node.
to us? I think I asked you this last year at some point, but could you put some numbers to that on notice?
So, but can I just be sure I understand the question, Senator? So if there's a couple of new homes that are being built in an existing FTTN neighborhood, copper will be run to those, because it doesn't make economic sense to pull fiber just for a couple of homes on a block of land that's been remodeled. If it is in a bigger development, then that is typically going to be served by fiber going out to those areas.
Right. I've got one more, if I may, if there's anything else that you're able, and then I'll get out of your way. I'll even
Very
leave.
long, 30 seconds.
I'll even
but
leave
if it's
the
your
room.
last one for the night.
I
then
can't
that's
get
no
out of
problem.
here without asking about Sky Muster, because I think the rollover was today, was it not, to the new satellite?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I just got 2 questions. If they're complex, please take them on notice, because we're out of time. Have you had any complaints from users of those satellites around the latency involved that makes them almost unusable for voice communications, because it's bouncing a long way out and a long way back? And the second one is, how many people did you leave behind in the rollover from the interim service?
So the network was never designed for voice. It can do it, but it's, kind of a second grade service, if you will,
Because of the latency?
because of the
Isn't it?
latency predominantly.
It's not a voice satellite, it's a broadband satellite.
And I would remind the Senator, too, that we don't disconnect the copper. Telstra does not disconnect the copper going to these homes. The fixed line network, after 18 months, it has to disconnect. For the fixed wireless and for the satellite, Telstra continues to maintain the copper and provide those
So what do
services.
the folks in the Sky Muster footprint without copper do for voice from now on?
No. I mean, again, you can do a variation of it, but it's kind of like an early Skype call, if you remember
Right,
that
I do,
quality.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what are those people meant to do for voice
Sounds like
communications? I'm so pushing my luck, aren't I?
You are.
So that's-
It's not a requirement of NBN.
Happy to take it on notice if
We're
you've got anything
happy
you can
to.
add.
If that doesn't answer your question, we will.